is the goo tentacle slime or is it cum? You know what I mean?
Sure.
We're back with our Eggers arc here on Foreplay with his second movie as we are going chronologically. If you missed the first episode, it was on The Witch. This one is on The Lighthouse. Then we will do The Northman. And finally, we will conclude with Nosferatu, which is all of his movies, as it turns out. So we don't have to guess or pick or make selections this time. It was all very straightforward. The Lighthouse is a effectively two-man play containing Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson stuck on an island in a lighthouse, filmed in an antique style, reminiscent of, I would say, nautical photography from the late 19th and early 20th century. It is, like all of Eggers' films, a period piece in a way that is meticulously detailed, and also kind of a Lovecraftian psychological horror slash black comedy. It's very funny.
Yeah, it's really laugh out loud funny in a lot of parts, and obviously as well, I mean, probably the aspect of it you're leaving out is it's very sexually charged as a film as well. It's homoerotic. It's back. We're talking about homoeroticism in an episode of Foreplay. I'm so ready.
It's also our second mermaid sex film after The Master.
Yeah, well, and if we do, what is it, the fucking what is it, The Shape of Water or whatever? That was the fish sex movie.
I certainly hope we never will do that film. That's everything I don't like about cinema.
It's diabolical. What an Oscar. Crazy. But you know, maybe for the lulz, maybe we just do an arc where we just torture ourselves. But anyway, The Lighthouse is not that. It's a very strange, it's like a very curious movie, and I think probably it's my personal favorite Robert Eggers film. I think it's the one a lot of people will bounce off, but out of all of his films, this is the one that rewards repeat viewing. This is the one where you will find a little detail every time you watch it, and it really is, you know, it's a noodle scratcher. It's like got so many things going on, and I love films that work both on a surface viewing, like there is a literal text you can follow and it makes sense and the story holds up. But then I love the allegory and metaphor of film and kind of, you know, what this is alluding to. As I said, it's got, you know, it explores themes of isolation, loneliness, but also as well, because it's Robert Eggers, this is actually, if you can believe it, loosely based on a true story as well about two Welsh lighthouse keepers.
We're also both named Thomas.
Yes, yeah. So it's really good. And just what obviously tips it over for me is the Lovecraftian aspect to it, which I think is done exactly how classic Lovecraft was done well. It's why his writing resonates to this day. It's in the background. It's in the periphery. It's just kind of out of reach. It's like, you know,
it's unknowable. It's a glimpse of something, and it's the psychological horror of the glimpse of that thing, not the actual manifestation of the monster or the supernatural. And arguably, just like in some of Lovecraft, this might not even be real. I think, you know, it was really interesting to watch this film after our David Lynch arc, because it does feel like Lynch in some aspects. Yeah. And I was actually reading a Reddit AMA with Eggers after he made this movie, where he was asked what some of his favorite horror films were, and he listed Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, and Mulholland Drive, and said Lynch is one of his favorite directors. And it definitely feels like it has some aspects of David Lynch to it, in the fact that this can be interpreted in many different ways, because we're not sure whether this is real. It's a real descent into madness. We're not sure if it's entirely in somebody's mind. It could actually be interpreted like Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive as a fever dream of somebody who is dying, which could just be Robert Pattinson at the end of this movie dying and making all this stuff up.
And to keep it Lynchian, right, we could, given that he loves our arcs, evidently Robert Eggers, we could replace Roger Ebert with Robert Eggers and make him the fourth person temporarily, since I would much prefer that. I imagine he's got better opinions about film. But yeah, this is like what I adore about this film is how it straddles genre with just such confidence. Like, it's like 1 minute you are laughing at the fucking you're fond of me lobster scene, which is just one of the all-time greats. Just one of the all-time great scenes in any film.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
Drunken in a Virginia fence.
I seen it. You're fond of me lobster. Say it. Say it.
Right, like, that is a fucking standout. But then also it's like really deeply disturbing and horrifying in a lot of ways. And at the end, as I said, you're kind of just left with, you know, this like really, I don't know, like queasy feeling almost. It's like a very, it's a very tough movie in terms of like how much it's actually doing, but I just think it's so effortless in its delivery. Like I can understand how people will bounce off this, but I urge people to, as soon as you've watched it, just watch it again. That's literally what I did on the very first viewing. Well, the very first home viewing, I should say. I went to see it in the cinema when it first came out. Then it came to, because it was during COVID. I think I just got back to the UK. I hadn't long been back in the UK, I think. Oh, no, actually, no, I was still in the US. So yeah, I saw it. I saw it in a cinema in the US, and then it came out on home release quite quickly because of COVID. And I got to watch it again, and then I watched it right back again. So I watched it like 3 times pretty much within a couple of months of it being out. And I was just so engrossed by it. And the story that it was trying to tell, and all the different layers to it. And I think I have kind of an understanding now of the film, but what I kind of love about it is that you don't have to be married to any particular interpretation. It's kind of like just whatever you want it to be.
That's something I was going to ask you, actually. I'm not a big fan of this film. I told you it's my least
yeah.
favourite Robert Eggers film. And one of the reasons why is because the first sort of like 45 to half an hour of the movie almost presents like it is a mystery story and there's going to be something unravel. Whereas I would actually say you don't get, there's no linear plot to this film, really.
No.
Like, it's more like a bunch of sequences and a bunch of horror. And in fact, they intentionally, but it's weird, it's the difference between mystery and mystique. They intentionally never give you the answers, basically. Like, in fact, I wanted to ask you about this, Richard, because fully enough, the reason I knew this would be up your alley when I saw this film is you could easily make this into like a 1 hour fucking Twilight Zone episode.
Sure.
Like, it's that sort, it has that sort of a vibe to it where you, because you know some of the best Twilight Zone episodes are the ones where it's not a story, you're just thrown into something. You're there with the first person experiencing all the stuff going on. You never quite know why, and then there's some sort of like weird twist elements that are like bizarre, etc. So one thing I wanted to ask you about was actually the second half of this film is obviously where it goes like from like a slow pace to like a very, very accelerated pace with all the horror and all the imagery and stuff. So I want to actually ask you, did you take the interpretation that, like, for example, this was some kind of scenario where like they had all been there before, or like the Willem Dafoe character was already mad at the beginning and you just get drawn into that? Was it that like it, because in the film they make it like if it was a linear story, then really it's just the fact that that like boat isn't there waiting for him. After that it all just goes mad. But actually you could obviously, like you said, there's a million interpretations you can do with it. Like, was that just a fantasy that was ever going to be a boat? Were they always on this? Like,
Yeah.
What was your sense of this film?
Where I've kind of sat with it by the end of like I said, having watched this movie a lot and been fascinated with this film. As I said, if you were to start movies in 2019 and only from 2019 to now, this would be a easily top 5, top 3 movie for me personally. But where I've kind of sat with it is that there's definitely something at play about the characters, particularly Willem Dafoe. I think Willem Dafoe is the older version.
I'm Thomas. I'm Thomas. You're Ephraim. I lied. I'll be scuppered.
Right, because that's the part about the first half that I was thinking they're laying clues for like
yeah.
a mystery, but instead it's more like they're just building up the idea that like this can all like reference back to what happens in the second half, and like, you know, his oddities suddenly aren't like clues, they're like sort of like, yeah, like you said, some sort of like a strange connection.
Yes, and I think ultimately, you know, kind of where I've got to sit with it is what Robert Pattinson's character is essentially looking at. He's Winslow. What he's looking at when he looks at Willem Dafoe's character, he is looking at like a future version of himself that may or may not exist. Yeah, he's essentially torturing himself in this like purgatory-like setting of the timeless, mysterious, phallic lighthouse. And ultimately, at the end, the way it's presented, again, to a callback to Twilight Zone, the occurrence at Owl Creek episode, where it could be a death dream.
Absolutely,
because he's dead on the rocks. But, you know, how did he get there? Is it the mariner's curse of killing the seagull? Is it something more complicated than that?
By the way, I almost expected that to be the ending, that somehow the ending would be like the film just started over again or something like that, you know, because it has that sort of it has that dreamlike quality to it, doesn't it?
But yeah, I think ultimately this is why, even though it works textually, you can look at the film and follow it from beginning to end, and there might be a few little plot holes, but ultimately it holds up as a story just on its face. What I think is more interesting is the kind of mysterious aspect, like why a lighthouse? Why a lighthouse? Why the light? Why does he have to go up and absorb the light? Why is there a tentacle there? When he has the visions of being destroyed by the lighthouse on Willem Dafoe's head, like, and it just burns him away. What is this? What is it saying? What is it really saying? And kind of where I've ended up with it is, I think ultimately for Winslow's sins, which are alluded to right at the start of the movie, like why has he come to the lighthouse? We know he's assumed someone's identity. We know that's probably predicated on a murder. We know he's not a good person. He's in some sort of purgatory environment where ultimately his prison warden, Wake, Willem Dafoe, is a future version of himself. And it's kind of like this interesting aspect of this is what we do to it's what we do to ourselves, right? Like you torture yourselves, the guilt, the remorse. And I just like that as an idea. Now, probably there's like a million other different interpretations. I obviously like the kind of homoerotic aspects in this. It's very phallic movie talking about male companionship and what can happen between men when they're isolated for long periods of time. And I think it's a fascinating exploration of also not just homoerotic, but like paternal.
Oh, sure.
You know, like Wake is ultimately a father figure, but a father figure that also represents the only sexual outlet for somebody on a tiny island who all he's got to do is jerk
Besides
off
a
to a mermaid
scrimshaw
statue.
mermaid?
Yeah, it's like... But yeah, for me, I think that's the more aspect. There's a scene where Wake talks about anyone who looks at the lantern will be punished. It's just for him to see. And I genuinely think he's some sort of avatar of punishment, and where it starts to unravel is rather than accept the punishment and the penalty of the lighthouse, Winslow decides to try and break free and not really atone for his past.
I mean,
that's where it unravels.
whether or not it's his future self, I do think that Thomas Wake is he is the metaphorical lighthouse burning him away, and he's afraid of the lighthouse because it is shining a light on his worst qualities, right?
Correct, yeah.
It is basically exposing him for the things he doesn't like about himself, and that, you know, he's told not to go up to the lighthouse, that it's only for Wake.
It breaks pretty much every rule in the film if you
yes.
look. It's all established early on.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't know what he's doing, and he is in terror of himself and his previous actions. He doesn't say it was a murder, but we know it was a murder. The implication is very strongly based off of his guilt and the fact that he keeps seeing the logs in the water, and we have the
seagull
vision
as
of
well.
Winslow.
I think
seagull.
the fact that he just smashes the seagull to death with almost out like any thought or hesitation. I think what you're supposed to intuit from that. This is a man with a
Is that
temper.
he's
Yeah.
impulsively murderous, basically. If something annoys him enough times. And also, it's just the language of the movie, too. So, for example, Wake continuously calls him a dog, which is exactly what Winslow called him over and over and over again.
Will you do what you wished you'd done to old Winslow? Will you best me then? For Winslow were right. Thomas, you're a dog. A filthy dog! A dog!
And that's one of the triggers that sent him into this murderous rage. And I think it's very unlikely that Wake, without knowing that information, would use that exact same terminology to the degree he does within that movie, unless Wake was some aspect of... we call him Winslow, but this is why it's confusing, because Winslow's not his real name, right? Robert Pattinson's character's psychology, right? If it wasn't some sort of, Jungian psychological experience where he was
seem like he's being
confronting an aspect of
interrogated every
itself.
time they talk to each other.
Yeah.
Like every time, it's almost like he's trying to get him to confess to something. Or
I mean, it's also
person.
right in front of your face as well. He's called Thomas Wake. He is the awakening. He is the walk. Like, that's the version that Winslow, Thomas Howard can get to. That's the version of yourself that will dictate your punishment, and to detest that version of yourself because of all of its obvious failings and its antagonistic stance towards you as a younger man is kind of like, it's almost like a rejection or a repudiation of destiny, essentially, which I think is why everything unravels.
I also think that the Lighthouse is interesting as a concept because, I mean, we talked about lighthouses when we did our episode on Annihilation, and obviously, like, there's similar stuff going on to Annihilation here, which is that the purpose of the lighthouse is to ward off danger, but in fact, in both of these stories, the lighthouse is the danger in and of itself. But in Annihilation, they are being drawn to the lighthouse, where in this one, they are trapped in the lighthouse. And I think it's really interesting because Thomas Howard, Robert Pattinson, his character is running away from his past, and he's seeking this isolated environment. But the only thing in this isolated environment is a light that shines itself on his misdeeds and his broken psychology. Right? So it becomes inescapable in a way. And he is like a moth to a flame of the lighthouse, constantly going up there, looking up through the grate, wondering what the hell's going on up at the top. So I agree with you that this is definitely, it is, especially because they're both called Thomas, right? The implication is that they are a part of each other in some way. And also, it has to be said, one of them is running away from being called Thomas and then is presented with a man called Thomas who is showing him or explicitly revealing all of his flaws, right? So that's another, I think, big key to this film. But on a basic level, what I think is interesting is even if you ignore all of the stuff that we just talked about, which is subtext to the movie, the actual text of it is still, what's so great about this movie is it's still really interesting. It's not even the actions of the film are not necessarily clear and deserve to be discussed, because by the end it's actually unclear which character is going insane. If you want to read the film literally, is it Howard who is feeling this guilt and is descending into madness, or is Thomas
Yes,
Wake?
I was going to bring this up.
Yeah, is Thomas
Could
Wake?
be him imagining the other character too, and he's he's the interlocutor towards his past self, like reliving his whatever he did or whatever. But all that.
But like, is Thomas Wake the crazy one gaslighting Howard and who has killed his former inhabitant, or is Howard imagining?
Help me to recollect. Who are you again, Tommy? I'm probably a figment of your imagination. This rock is a figment of your imagination, too.
Yeah, that's why. That's
murder
another thing.
of
If this
former
here's the
partner.
thing: if this had been a Twilight Zone episode, they would have done a slightly more straight storyline, Monty. Like it would have been like that. That would be the reveal at the end. Is that like the Willem Dafoe character kills every other person that goes there, and if you violate like the sanctity of him being the one who gets to enjoy the light and all that jazz, you know. By the way, I even thought an interesting aspect to this thing was because essentially you should know like 2/3 of the way through he's never ever going to leave the lighthouse. Like that's essentially the premise of the. It's like you say, Richard. It's almost like a purgatorial state that you're just trapped in for whatever reason. In this case, for your sins, potentially. And one detail about that I thought was clever is an obvious aspect and theme is the notion that when people go into isolation, they will naturally, because you essentially have only yourself for company, you will sort of go a bit mad because you don't have other people to counterbalance you and represent other things. And one of the classic things that people find, and you'll see this in the modern world in a million different ways, it's the reason why people have so many vices, you'll notice, that essentially are about erasing yourself or like destroying your memory or your consciousness of what you're experiencing, because you can't ever actually run away from yourself. That's the one thing you can't ever run away from. It's like the thing when people try and like a midlife crisis and they move to another country, it's like you'll quickly find out you're still there. That's the problem. You couldn't actually leave yourself behind. All your problems are coming with you. You're just going to be in a new place experiencing them, you know.
Are you familiar with what William Burroughs used to believe about the cut-up technique? Yeah, right. So William Burroughs believed that if you if you cut into the present, you could get it to essentially bleed out the future, and he was upset.
It's like a kind of magical technique, essentially.
Yeah. What he would do is he would write passages and paragraphs, and then he would cut them up and reassemble them to create what should be like a fucked up, exquisite corpse kind of story, but he believed it gave it some sort of broader meta-narrative. And the other thing he would do is, and he absolutely believed this adamantly, he would just walk around with a tape recorder strapped to his body, recording hours and hours, dozens of hours of like just background noise. And then he would cut the tape into random orders and play it back, and he believed it would reveal aspects of the future to him. He would hear like little phrases that would then occur in his life, like, you know.
By the way, you know the funny thing about this is it'll sound really weird to people because it's so technological, Richard, and especially because it's based on technology from like 50 years ago. But what people wouldn't realize is, to me, when I hear that stuff, this is why I say, if you don't know yet, some of it was like a magical, almost his like magical lineage. Is this just sounds like a bloody shaman, where they're like, you know, looking in the entrails of an animal and they're just seeing what like imagery comes out to them and sort of what it touches in you.
And the reason I bring this up is I think like occasionally artists will come along and they will create a piece of art that is so sort of foundational that it does tap into the future. It taps into the zeitgeist without even knowingly doing it. And the reason I bring this up is this movie came out about 6 months before the pandemic. And yet think about this film and what is happening in this film and what all of us went through in 2019, 2020, 2021 in terms of isolation, in terms of, you know, marriages and relationships being frayed. For a younger audience, I'm pretty sure it was a really tough time where if you were living at home, very fractious with your parents, perhaps, if you're still living at home. But this movie was the quintessential pandemic movie. And it's like, I'm astounded at how Eggers did a meta-commentary on an event that hadn't happened yet. It is so insane. Because if you were to ask me, you know, when did this movie come out? I would have gone, oh, well, there's no way Eggers could have made a movie like that prescient. So it must have come out during a pandemic. Like the pandemic must have informed the right. No, absolutely not. And I it's another reason why I agree. Like when you use the term magic and shamanism, I don't tend to get too mystical when it comes to art. I keep my cards very close to my chest, you know, although I'm fascinated by like people like Alan Moore when he talks about how like what happened to magic was just became language, right? And words are spells. I love all of this.
By the way, it's worth noting that Eggers' own interests are pretty deeply into Hermeticism, alchemy, folklore, religion in general. He knows all of this stuff that we're talking about 100%.
Yeah, and
apparently in his AMA, he said he has actually written, I think, a treatment of a film about Hermeticism and alchemy already. So,
well, I mean, can't wait
maybe
to
something
see
to
a
look
film.
forward to.
Can't wait to see a film about some demented alchemist coming out from Robert Eggers. But I mean, this movie, the way that it explores the themes of loneliness and companionship and isolation and madness. We all went mad in the pandemic. We know people, by the way, many such cases in esports. We essentially lost friends. They didn't die. They didn't get the fucking flu and die. But their brains broke and they never came back. And this movie, it's like, if you can't engage with the movie because you're like, yeah, well, I don't really want to think about Robert Pattinson fucking having sex with Willem Dafoe, or I don't really like Lovecraftian horror, or I don't like movies that are just all questions and no answers, which is something Eggers says about this film quite specifically. He says, I'm not interested in answering a lot of the questions the movie explores.
It's probably also that he doesn't have the answers, much like David Lynch didn't have the answers.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
That's actually a thing. And I told you, I don't normally read like interviews and stuff with the people who make the things. I just tend to consume the thing and take my own thing from it. But the few times I've tried looking up, for example, like when it was like Nosferatu, I would look up, does Robert Eggers have like a deep interest in the occult? He only hints at these things. Like he actually almost goes out of his way, like David Lynch, like you're saying, to not tell people, here's what I meant by that, because I do hate that school of people who are like, well, I found out actually the songwriter meant this to be about a girl. Like that, to me, you remove the magic when you do that. I actually like that he sort of leaves it like for you, vital for you to take something from.
Now, look, as I said, with other films, there's not really, I don't want to say they lack depth, because that's not true, but they're very, like The Witch as a contrast. It's like I said, there's no interpretation, there's no mystery, there's no riddle to solve there.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Prima facie, that's the story. This is the complete opposite. It is like he wanted to just layer allegory and metaphor. There's Freudian and Jungian psychology just colliding against.
There's a huge amount of references to New England literature, right? I mean, Melville. Like, you can't tell me that this isn't analogous to Moby Dick, both in Wake's character as potentially Ahab-esque, and also the Lighthouse being the white whale. Like, that's like very clearly in there.
Oh, yeah.
You're dealing with Lovecraft, who's another New England, writer whose works take place largely in New England. You're dealing with some British writers. Coleridge. Like, how can you think about this film and not think about the Rime of the Ancient Mariner? You can't if you know the literature. So there are many references within this work. The whole killing the seabird thing. Now that's an old sailor's dilemma, right, about killing the seabird. But the most famous example of that is Coleridge. It is the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, when the albatross is killed, they are stuck in the doldrums, right? And if you're in a ship, what happens when you're in the doldrums? You can't escape.
Yep.
If you're on an island, what happens in a storm? You can't escape. It's the same thing. It's just the reverse, because they're on land instead of on a ship. But they are basically isolated and trapped, by the result of killing the seabird, which is the same. It's the same effect.
I'll also add, one of the things that I know probably people will bounce off the movie is just the way it looks. Obviously black and white, but also the aspect ratio.
It looks so good.
Which isn't 4:3. A lot of people say it's 4:3. It's actually a more historically accurate 1.19 to 1 aspect ratio. So it's nearly a square.
What are you talking about? It's basically Instagram, man. All the Zoomers will love this.
Yeah, true. But that is a period. That's period appropriate.
By the way, I did unironically initially think I had like a fucked up version when I first got this film. And like, I don't look. But then I looked up and looked at it. I was able to just quickly check that is the aspect ratio supposed, and they said it was. Yeah.
But what I love about that is. Right, only Eggers would sort of have the audacity to do this, because what he's doing there is he is making you feel that it is a period-appropriate movie. He is
By the way, if the actual camera quality was just worse, you could easily believe this film was from like the 1930s or something, mate, of course.
And so he grounds it in a historic framing. There's absolutely nothing historically accurate about this movie in the sense that
I was going to ask that as well. What period is it supposed to be set in? It's like
late 19th
indeterminate
century. I think 1890. 1890.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the tech part also throws it off. It's hard to fully grasp exactly where it's supposed to be placed.
So he took inspiration, I think, from maritime movies from the period. So I looked up that aspect ratio, and it was only used between 1926 and 1932, which is very
perfect. There you go.
Right. But the movie takes place in 1890, but that was obviously before the use of film cameras to make films, to make movies, right? So he takes that, I think, that aspect ratio and some ideas of that from maritime films that were filmed in that era, even though it takes place earlier. But where you see the late 19th centuryness of it is just take a look at the opening shot of Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, where they're standing there looking at it. It looks identical to a photograph of someone from that period. Yeah. Right? He sets it up with a very static shot that appears like a 19th century photograph. It's brilliant. I mean, I think this is... I was very complimentary of The Witch and the way that it looks, but this looks very different, obviously. But his level of research, and again, I want to go back to the cinematographer he has worked with, Jarin Blaschke, because this guy is on all 4 of his films, and he delivers very different stuff in each of Eggers's films, and yet it feels like the right style, and it's incredibly consistent. But for this guy and Eggers to go around and say, okay, we're going to do this Puritan movie that is framed like oil paintings from the 17th century. Then we're going to bounce into maritime photography from the late 19th and early 20th century. Then we're going to do a Viking movie, probably from, I don't know, 700-800, and then we're going to do a 19th century, royal nobility vampire movie. Is just nuts that they're able to nail all these styles, and it goes to show their researches and attention for detail is really thorough, because this film looks amazing. And I think the other aspect of it that is really good about the aspect ratio is that it makes you uncomfortable because it's really tight a lot of time, and there's a lot of close-ups in this film, and you can't escape like Willem Dafoe's face a lot of the time, or Robert Pattinson's face. It's just, there's nothing else to look at, and it's very deliberately made that way. And if it was in a widescreen format, you would always see more than their face, right?
Just to talk
where it's
about
just like a box with their face in it.
Because I think when you bring up Willem Dafoe, and I definitely want to get Duncan's opinion on this, because for me, two Oscar-worthy performances from both of the leads, and I'll start by talking about Willem Dafoe. He's like a very strange actor to me in the sense
this is the role he was born for, man.
Yeah.
I don't know, like God made him to play this role. It is crazy.
I look at the projects he's picked historically through his career, and I just love how erratic they all are. I love that Willem Dafoe isn't afraid of going big, being hammy, big roles. You think about his take on the Green Goblin in Spider-Man.
Banger.
Absolutely,
really
yeah,
good.
right. But also as well, there's no other actor that could. I can't imagine another actor that would deliver that big level of performance. That scene where he's talking to himself without it going full Nick Cage or something. You know what I mean?
No, he kills it.
He absolutely just gets right up to the line and stays there, and that's fucking hard to do. So I wanted to ask you, Duncan, about Willem Dafoe's performance in this movie. I think it I don't want to say a career turn, but fuck me, it's right up there.
The thing is, in this film, it's Robert Pattinson I'm not that big a fan of. Like, for me, what people are doing, it reminds me of the early days. We talked about this in a past episode of Leonardo DiCaprio, where because you're initially cast as like, oh, you can dismiss this guy, it's just a heartthrob, he's going to just be like for the girls, teenage girls. When you show any acting chops, by the way, same thing when people like Jim Carrey would do, or Robin Williams would do a serious turn. People then go too far the other way and make it like you're fucking actually like Lawrence, you know, fucking like some god tier. You know, they go too far the other way. I actually do think it's Willem Dafoe that carries this film. He is really good in this one. As Monty says, it is almost like if someone was a massive Willem Dafoe fan, this is like the film you would write for him, never mind cast him in it. Like, he obviously kills the role completely. I mean, what he manages to do in this film, actually, that's also another thing. I'll reference the Green Goblin one. I also thought the thing that was so unique about that was, first of all, he actually did treat that. Remember, that film came out in the early 2000s. This is before it was even anything glamorous to do superhero films. He treated like that was a real film. He didn't treat it like, lol, I'm just getting the money here, like, what am I doing? He actually took that, like, he was trying to make it some, like, fucking Shakespearean villain or something that's really over the top. But one of the things I thought he killed in that role was, then he also was really convincing as Norman Osborn, just like a person relating to Peter Parker on, like, a human level, and he had that, like, humanity to him. So I've always thought his range is one of his best tools. It's just the thing is, he's often cast, Steve Buscemi has the same thing, where you're some side weird character, so you're almost only going into the outre and the bizarre, and you're a crazy guy. Like when we get to the fucking Northman, he's also perfectly cast in that, but that's his more traditional casting, where you're only going to be in a few scenes and you're just a weird guy who obviously, by the way, one of his best things with this guy, it's why the biggest joke about the Green Goblin casting is, if they'd actually been a visionary, this is where Sam Raimi missed it, you just do the film without the mask. His face is the mask. One of the things that's unbelievable at Willem Dafoe is the way he can contort his face. Like, he's also one of the best actors you'll ever see. That's why in the Northman he's perfectly cast. If you, like, light him with, like, fire and, like, different lighting,
yeah, because
you can see all the creases.
His face has a lot of definition.
Yeah, it does. Like, he's the sort of person, for real, by the way, along those lines of what you're talking about with The Witch, this is the sort of person you would make, like, a fucking amazing portrait of. Like, his face just tells us a story and a tale, and he can just, like, again, like, the way he can contort it just shows so much within it. So for me, I thought he did a really, really good job in this one, because you can already see, like almost glimmers of what he's going to do early in the film, but the way he's able, like I say, the range, he's able to ramp it right up, but he's also able to bring it all the way back down again and just be like the joke of this film. That's why I see what you mean about at the end. You can't actually tell, like, the joke could be, this could be a film actually just about one person, but the question is, which of them is it? Yeah. Like, that's actually probably the most interesting question you can ask, because this could be either, like, the deranged, as you say, like, warden who basically is the reason why you can't escape this and who torments you, or it could be the other way around. It could actually be someone, like, you know, struggling to find his own humanity and who he was before he went to this place and lost his mind and became whatever. And I even think in this film, one thing he also kills, because he has this monstrous element to him, is another thing I thought was clever about the way the film structure is set up is, you're going to think, if you remember back, it's just a film with two people in a room talking. No, there's a few scenes like that, and nearly all of those go to what Richard was talking about, things like alluding to what the past was, or it almost feels like you are being, like, grilled by someone and they're trying to catch you out and say, but you didn't say that before. You said this before. There's a lot of that going on. And also, by the way, they do overtly multiple times mention the notion, like, we're both Thomas. It's like, in a way that's like, you keep mentioning that a lot, mate. Yeah. Like again, like, let's be real. In real life, if someone comes up to you and goes, hey, we have the same car, you go, all right, dickhead, that's not like that interesting. You wouldn't mention it like 3 times, would it? So I thought that was telling. But I thought an interesting angle people could take was, since the whole structure is to do our shifts, my shift is at night when you are sleeping, and then yours is during the day when everything's out, and you don't ever come and see what I'm doing. And also, then we have this, like, small overlap on either end. Like, that could also itself, that's a classic tale of people go mad to the idea that, like, they are the other character when they're awake, etc. It's a classic, like, serial killer trope where the detective is the killer in the end, etc. They're playing with ideas like that. So I did think Willem Dafoe was expertly cast for this particular film. Like I say, you could almost believe that. You could almost believe that part was written for him. In the same ways, obviously, people have seen a million times referenced, Monty, that famous picture that they reference with that scene where the light goes out and it shoots into that guy when he's, like, leaning down. Right, I've never read any interviews. It's pure speculation. I get the sense that's the sort of director also that Eggers is. He's someone where it's like a song or a painting or a poem.
He says he literally stole that, by the way.
Oh, right.
That, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's obviously, if you look at the structure, it's directly the same. But I mean, as in, I think he encounters those ideas, and then from that, the rest of it germinates out and comes. It's like it's almost like he reverse engineers a film to go around that, to create a moment, to have a thing like that. And so I actually did think that this is one of the best Willem Dafoe performances, because he's another one of those actors. By the way, when this guy dies, magically a bunch of people who never said jack shit about him will make him out to be the greatest actor they ever saw. They loved all of his films. But yeah, I agree, actually. A lot of his career, by the way, hasn't been being a leading man. It's been being like a side character. And often he's the person where, that's why I reference it to Steve Buscemi, it's his job actually to sort of do more than he has in the script. This looks like he has a lot of fucking material to work with in this one. And I actually do think, like I said, considering so much of it is just close-ups on his face and really intense emotion, I think how many people are better at that?
Then carpenter the whole light station back together from scrap and then do it all over again. You'll do it! And by God and by golly, you'll do it, smiling lad, because you like it. You like it because I says you will.
This guy
What I love about Willem Dafoe is, and it's kind of interesting because I brought up Nick Cage earlier. Nick Cage is very similar in his approach to the studious aspect of acting. That, like, Nick Cage has gone to Japan and studied, like, kabuki theater. If you ever listen to Willem Dafoe talk about performance and where he draws things from, I think he's got a really good Criterion fucking Closet episode as well for anyone that watches that shit. He's just a student of film and acting and so incredibly intelligent. And where, like, Nick Cage, for instance, like, some of his stories are kind of legendary in how ridiculous they are. Like,
that should be a film in itself.
Yeah.
A film where Nick Cage plays himself going to Japan to study kabuki theatre, then to just do Face Off or something like.
Yeah, it's
just so ridiculous. I love that he takes himself that seriously, though. Richard.
That is the thing, because it's like with Ghost Rider, apparently. This is like when he was on like his 5th bankruptcy as well or something. Like, so he went and bought.
Also, the fact that he actually, by the way, if you don't know the detail about it, because a lot of people won't, it's not that he spent it all on drugs. Like,
no, he spent it on like dinosaur bones.
He bought castles. He bought things like buy loads of castles. That, I also love that as well. That alone is the best reason to go bankrupt.
So I think it was for Ghost Rider. He bought like some ancient Egyptian relics.
I love this guy.
And he fucking smashed them to pieces with a hammer and then sawed the bits into the Ghost Rider leather jacket so he would like be imbued with like some ancient mysticism from Egypt or something. Completely nothing to do with the character either.
This would be super cool if it wasn't Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I know.
And if the film wasn't Ghost Rider, Monty, like, again, like, you know,
you don't have to go that method for Ghost Rider.
Even though I just said we're Spider-Man, like, Dafoe committed to it. Ghost Rider,
yeah, but that's the difference.
You don't give your soul to
it's
that
like
one,
I said, when Dafoe talks about this performance, I've watched so many interviews about this film with the actors. Willem Dafoe is like, I mean, I think this was a very arduous shoot as well. They were on that island in Nova Scotia. They were getting wrecked by the weather. You know, the scene where he's fucking burying him. Willem Dafoe's
he's just throwing.
He's just there, just literally
dirt in his mouth.
Yeah, he's there. Yeah, dog. It is brilliant.
The divine gracious and the fiddler's being sent where no man is suffered.
I mean, and for him to commit to this, with just utter fierce respect for the material, it's awesome. It really is.
It's just that he looks like a 19th century old mariner. If you were to make a Moby Dick movie today, wouldn't you cast Willem Dafoe?
He has an amazing beard as well.
The beard.
He has a really fucking sick
I mean,
beard,
as I said, back to the lobster scene. The monologue there, the heart.
It's also just funny.
It's fucking so good.
Danny! Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow! Hark! Hark! Triton! Hark!
Bursting ye! Like, oh, it's just wonderful.
The scene also where one of the scenes he nails is when he's cursing.
Oh yeah,
Thomas Howard.
Yeah, that's what I'm
where
saying,
it's just this unending metaphor of how he is cursing him, and which ends up, just because it goes on so long, being terribly funny. And then, like you say, the lobster scene where he's talking to Robert Pattinson, telling him that, oh no, you really loved my lobster, is hilarious. And then also,
again, he's sick of his cooking. Like, he's sick.
Yeah.
It's like, you are a terrible cook. It's all I've got to eat on this fucking godforsaken island. I'm already 3 weeks in and I cannot handle it anymore. And it's just that absolute break of him saying, I'm sick of your cooking, I'm sick of your company, I'm sick of you walking around farting. I mean, what an introduction, by the way. You're just there on a bed, you're putting your kit down, right? It's only going to be 4 weeks, don't worry about it. And fucking Willem Dafoe in his long johns, his like stained long johns, just bends over and just farts right in your face and walks out the room scratching his balls. It's like, oh my God, it's so fucking good. Like, it's just so hilarious.
And then also just the why'd you spill your beans? Just echoing echoing forever.
Yeah,
It's just,
why'd you spill
it's
your
very
beans?
funny.
Yeah.
Why'd you spill your beans?
Yeah.
Why'd you spill your beans? Why'd you spill your beans?
Bro,
It's so
By the way,
ridiculous.
another thing about the idea as well, that whatever the mystery is, which is never really revealed, it's sort of left to just be like, it's up to you what you want to do with that and how much you want to connect it. If part of that I thought also worked quite well was the idea that in the first half of the film, basically before he tries to go away, like, because his whole thing's like, no, I'm just gonna like keep my head down and do the job, and I'm not drinking alcohol that much, etc. You know, like that also is a really great example of what people do in response to when they go do something too extreme. Like, if you've ever met anyone who, like, the classic example is people who are like teetotalers now. First of all, they never shut the fuck up, like almost trying to convince themselves by telling you that they don't drink alcohol anymore and regaling you of how bad they noticed that. It's a weird thing about people who are alcoholics or drug addicts. They almost get off on the pornography of explaining how bad they were to contrast how good they are now. And there's an element of that in the beginning of this where it's like, it seems like, no, he's got it all together, you know, he's just going to keep his head down. So then obviously later when it's like, well, I can't escape anywhere, fuck it, bombs away, just start drinking. Well, then you see like what the relapse would be like. You see like how ridiculous he becomes himself. Like, in the first half of the film, if you think this is like a murder mystery and you want to know what happens in the lighthouse, you're going to think like, I'm supposed to identify with it. He's me for real. Wow, that Willem Dafoe character is weird. But then by the end, they're both ridiculous. Like, they're both outrageous characters that have just gone to insane lengths. And as much as you might think with that first scene of Willem Dafoe, like with all the light going on him when he's all naked, there's way crazier shit the Robert Pattinson guy's doing later in the film. Yeah. Like, he's gone completely off the reservation too. There's loads of that. Also, on the whole shooting thing, by the way, this is why in the modern day, even though sadly a lot of people, to be like pretentious, have done it too much, this is why when you go out of your way to choose a black and white setting, it can be super effective because it does do something different to how you experience the film. If anyone's ever seen the Lars von Trier film Europa, I think it has a similar effect. Well, like, you didn't have to do it that way. In fact, part of it's in colour, but there's something about that. Because I've always thought the thing about black and white is that it just makes lighting way more beautiful, which is obviously perfect for this film. Somehow, like gradations of grey have a different effect when it's lighting someone's face. It's actually one of the things early Kubrick films were playing with, for example. Whereas if you do that same scene with like full-on mega technical, that can somehow distract from like the message that you're putting across or the acting performance. Like, if you have black and white, it's amazing for when you have like a candle-lit scene or something, and again, like shadows of a fire going across someone's face. It actually adds like an artistic quality to each frame almost.
They didn't come.
Yeah, look, I mean, just also quickly, just tap into Robert Pattinson. So I got the impression, Duncan, based on what you said, you didn't like his performance as much.
I didn't think it was bad, but I didn't think it was some 10 out of 10 performance. It was insane. I just thought, like, for me, he was the more ordinary part of the film. Some parts I fucked with. Sometimes I thought his accent was it just went in and out a little bit, things like that. So I didn't hate it. I don't dislike him but I liked him in that Batman film. I think he could be pretty good. I'm just not one of these people who goes the other way, like, wow, it turns out secretly he was actually a dope-ass actor. Like, I don't know about that. That's a bit too
I mean, where I'm at with him is, I will say this. Obviously, for any actor to be in a Hollywood slop, just churn fucking film.
Oh, it's inconceivable the guy who did Twilight does this film.
He also did Harry Potter when he was very young, too.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a major character in Harry Potter, so he was kind of like in all the slop.
Basically, he's meant to be a washed up drug addict, probably dead by now. He was like, very early on a heartthrob, and then as you get older and you lose your looks and everything else, Hollywood just throws you aside. What I love about what he's done for his career is he has actively sought out working with super interesting directors. You think about who he's worked with already. He worked with Cronenberg on Cosmopolis, a movie where the narrative is he lives in a limo he's like a high-powered guy. He lives in a limo, and he's got a fucking prostate problem that's eventually going to kill him. So for most of the movie, he's literally just getting a prostate massage while he's conducting his... It's fucking bonkers. He did that. He did Good Time, which I think is, again, one of the best movies of the 2010s. I think that is... Before Uncut Gems, Good Time was the panic attack on screen. Like, that is... It's just one thing after another about like a heist kind of gone wrong. It's great. And then he rocks up and does The Lighthouse. And then he did Tenet as well with Christopher Nolan.
I did enjoy him in that.
And he just did Bong Joon-ho, worked with Bong Joon-ho, who was his first film after winning Best Picture for Parasite. And by the way, he is great in Mickey 17. The movie is not very good, but he is very good.
He voiced the English dub of a Miyazaki movie, The Boy and the Heron, as well. Yep. So, like, if you're out there collecting fucking Pokemon of great living directors, like, fucking hell, he's killing it. He's killing the game. So I have to say, I think he's very good in this movie. It's just one of those things where it's like you're bristling against maybe a lifetime performance from Willem Dafoe. Like, I mean, it is very hard to not be overshadowed. And I imagine, actually, they probably had to talk a little bit about how that was all going to work and interlink, because nobody, whatever actors say, nobody wants to just get blown off the fucking screen. You know, it's like, hey, let's get Eminem to do a verse on my fucking song, and you just get fucking smoked, you know, like nobody wants that shit, right? Like nobody wants that. So they probably had to talk about how that was all going to interlink, but I think he's great. I mean, put it this way, in terms of, I knew he was real after Good Time. I knew he was a real actor. Now, generational talent, no, but capable of doing interesting and bold projects far, far away from fucking Twilight. Absolutely. This guy deserves respect.
He's grown a lot.
Yeah,
for sure.
Completely.
I
think he's really good in this movie.
I think he's good. I think I split the difference probably between you guys, which is like, I thought he was good and believable, but also there probably was somebody who could do this role better, but he is very good in it, and he does play off Dafoe nicely. And I think he does have he definitely shows like a believable character arc. And like you say, Richard, I enjoy the fact that he starts out as the straight man, the insert of the audience, and then slowly starts to, you know, as more of his backstory is revealed, and then as he potentially starts to go crazy, and he descends into the drunken fury / revelry, whatever you want to call it.
Sick of you laughing, snoring, and your goddamn farts. Your goddamn
alternating both sides of it. It becomes very interesting, and I think he does a great job with the character. His drunk scenes are very good,
very believable. I always say this: you can judge a lot of actors on how they play drunk.
The two things that are my triggers is being drunk or pretending to eat food. If you fuck those up, they used to be really hacky in Hollywood with the eating food one. If you're doing that thing where it's like when you're eating the steak, like that throws me. That you just look. I don't want to look at it, but why you overacting a part you're not actually good at enough at? In this movie, they do a pretty good job of showing like what would be like if you're at the end of 2 bottles of vodka.
Well, 2 bottles of fucking moonshine, like diesel fuel for the Lighthouse. That
so
constitutes their entire supply.
Woo! Monkey pants!
I love that. But yeah, I mean, that scene as well where they're just like...
Also the Master, by the way.
Yeah.
The rocket fuel.
Correct.
There's a lot of similarities between this movie and the Master.
Yeah.
No, by the way, I will say, actually, I did think that Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job of seeming like someone who was drunk. He actually fucking killed that.
Yeah, that correct. I mean, like, that's something I would like to rank at some point, is all-time great drunk performances, because for many, many years, just to bring up Nick Cage again, I don't know why he featured so heavily in this episode, but whatever. Obviously, a lot of people considered the benchmark to be Leaving Las Vegas, and he said quite famously, like he was like, I'm gonna have to, really method on this shit and to kind of get into the headspace and everything. And then he just became that. His life just is that now. But that was like the benchmark.
By the way, at some
people.
point on this series, I don't know when, we'll find an arc to get it. We'll definitely watch that film at some point, because not only we obviously like sort of love Nicolas Cage in our own way, but it is actually the movie that if you haven't seen him and you've seen all the other ones, it is an example of like just a real serious film with no like silly comedic elements. Like it's just really good.
Just really sad.
Yeah,
really sad.
Oh, it is right, tragic, but it's really good.
Great.
People probably shocked if you've never seen that film. You'll probably be shocked at what is possible.
But
I really wonder if we did a Nicolas Cage arc, what films we would actually end up picking, because he's had so many different.
Well, the beauty is we've already done a bunch, so we can
Ghost
go
Rider,
as far as we want on this one, can't we?
Ghost Rider 2. No, I don't know. Like I would remember. I mean, the thing is as well, he does about 10 movies every year because he's
done loads.
He's like bankrupt.
And by the way, I
Loads
will
of
actually say
straight-to-video
that
shit.
this is one of the reasons why I actually don't like. I can get with everyone and laugh at some of the silly performances, but like I also think people don't appreciate the flaw for a Nick Cage movie is higher than you expect. Like he's had a lot of movies that were supposed to be like throwaway sci-fi ones in the 2000s that like I watched them, they're pretty good actually. They're not bad. Like there's something to them.
The crazy part is he's actually done low key some fucking just unreal bangers, even in like the last 10 years.
Yeah, Color Out of Space,
Sure.
Mandy,
Pig.
The pig one, definitely.
There've been a bunch of, like, basically his shotgun approach has actually resulted in some pretty good indie films.
No, what's funny is I actually do think that's the part that's misunderstood. People think he's a hack, and it's like, no, he's like I always give this example. One of my favorite directors is Sidney Lumet, but the thing about him is he did it. He's like the guy where, when people say, it's one of my big triggers in esports, they go, I prefer quality over quantity. My joke is the only people who say that are pretentious people who can't do either, and their excuse for not doing much work is they'd make 10 shit films, so they do one good, one sort of not bad. People like Sidney Lumet and Nick Cage just do as many films as they can. They do some that are bad, some that are average, and they still do the really good ones in there as well. It's like somehow some of the quality part never gets lost. They just add the quantity and the quality. So I agree, Nick Cage has done a million films, but he's done the really amazing ones too, and the middle ones, and the not as good ones. But actually, that approach, in some ways, the reason why for an actor it's genius is because I think the actor has way less control over how good a film is.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of really great actors have picked shit films where you can tell they thought the script was all right, or they want to look at this person. You almost have to gamble if you're an actor.
We were just talking about Val Kilmer. That's Val Kilmer's career right there. It's
Yeah.
like him being good in bad movies.
His 90s, Nick Cage's 90s run is god tier. Like it would be god tier by any standard. He's obviously done
Raising Arizona,
Leaving Las Vegas, Raising Arizona, Wild at Heart, Face Off, Con Air, The Rock, 8mm, which is getting a critical appraisal. The forgotten Scorsese movie, Bringing Out the Dead, about the paramedics. Snake Eyes, Brian De Palma. This motherfucker actually just killed the 90s, Nick Cage.
Oh, he's cooking,
So I don't give a fuck what he does now. Like you can do all your straight-to-video movies. By the way, for every 9 of them, if you give me a Mandy, I'm fucking happy. Like
exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Who am I to judge?
Yeah.
So yeah, fuck the idea of like, oh, I prefer fucking quality over quantity. Sometimes you like, especially when you're just a wildly erratic actor like Nick Cage, who approaches every project with just this demented relish. Like, you're gonna have a Willy's Wonderland. That's the thing.
Yeah, by the way, I'm even looking through it. He has the most underrated catalogue of films ever, bro. Even in the 2000s, all those ones, fucking Lord of War, Weatherman, fucking. He has loads, mate, that are good. Also, by the way, the other thing that's genius about him, this is inadvertent, is he then also is just like so bad it's good in the stupid things like The Wicker Man.
Yeah, I know. Not the biggest.
That itself, if you tune in, it's like he's doing The Room and Citizen Kane the next day and he's killing both. You know what I mean?
I will say he fucking butchered Longlegs though, so,
That was the one disappointment because it looked on paper like that was going to be mega, didn't
I thought it was going to be like a new
didn't
7. Like, no, it wasn't. Anyway, back to the fucking Lighthouse. Just a nice little Nick Cage
That was our
segue.
Nick Cage break.
He was the werewolf in this episode. But like, I mean, also just to talk a little bit about it because it was what it got nominated for. One of the things I will say is Robert Eggers might be making the most beautiful movies right now. out of any of the directors.
That's why his partnership with that cinematographer clearly is like gold. Like, if people don't know, one of my other favourite directors is Wong Kar-wai. And if you ever go look, Monty, there's literally a famous guy, it's called like Christopher Doyle, who's the cinematographer that Wong Kar-wai works with. It's a guy who actually lived in like simultaneously Hong Kong, and he's like Australian or something. So he has like some weird East meets West blend. All you need to know is, unironically, if you ever go and look, all the films they collaborated on are all the best films of Wong Kar-wai's career. And the ones where they like didn't collaborate are just the all right ones. Like, people don't know that's actually one of the hidden parts of cinema. Everyone gives every credit for everything coming in the lens to the director, but like, as you can see in these films, mate, this cinematographer's like ability to play with lighting and colour is unbelievable, mate. He is like, that's one of the things when we get to Nosferatu, I thought he was God tier, right? Like, his ability to shoot, also the Northman, his ability to shoot when it's supposed to be dark, he does something different to the colour palette that's like incredible. Like, it'll be like a weird blue or something instead of like black, and I think the guy's incredible. The combo of those two is clearly magic.
He's also just insane at low light shooting, because as I understand it, this film was barely lit, and they did a bunch of stuff with candles in The Witch, and obviously
there's a lot of nighttime indoor scenes.
Also, I mean, we'll get to it, but in the Northman, fire. The Northman is a very dark movie. There's a lot of night sequences in that, and they really barely use light, but yet because of the way that they have the black and white in this film, the contrast is always there, and it just looks extraordinary.
Yes. I mean, go and look up. If you go to the Wikipedia page about this movie, there's a whole paragraph just about the different types of cameras and lenses they used for this. And whenever there was like a flashback or an argument, they had a special lens that was like it was made by like Panavision. They're not in rotation anymore, but you can still put them on the type of camera that they were using for the main shoot, but they use just a totally different type of lens just for the scenes where there's tension. It's fucking berserk, the level of craft. You know, you compare that to like Zack Snyder, who literally made a movie for Netflix where there's a dead pixel visible in scenes because he just didn't check it. When Red Letter Media brought that up, for anyone that gives a fuck. But yeah, it's actually insane how much visual attention is put into his films.
This is why I think it has to be Jarin Blaschke who's doing this, because Robert Eggers, as we know, is a former theater designer. Like, I just don't think he has the technical background to know all. I think he has great vision, and I think he has a great eye for framing and eye for detail and historical recreation. But I have to say that it's probably Blaschke who's doing all of this technical stuff that is so impressive. Well, like, he's the one who's realizing it.
Put it this way, this isn't even his best-looking movie. You would give that accolade to either The Northman or Nosferatu. The fact that
those are aesthetically beautiful films. They're unbelievable.
The Northman, again, I obviously watched it before. You know, we're recording back-to-back episodes. Guys, just letting everybody know. But I watched it last night again, big in the cinema room. Fucking hell, I'd forgotten how beautiful that movie is. Like,
think about even like the scene where they're about to do the raid, where they've got the horned helmet on the shaman scene. It's fucking it's a chef's kiss.
Actually, I'll say I've got a reappraisal now for The Northman, and I think where I'm at now is I think The Northman goes up into second for me. Actually, after watching it,
I think The Northman launched itself into maybe one of my favorite movies ever. So
I
also think, by the way, we'll get to it. I thought the rewatch was also really good.
The rewatch is fire.
I was scared.
But what I enjoy about this arc is before this arc, I had seen all of these movies one time only. So this is my second viewing for all of them, which has been really fun to like watch them all in a row and see them again.
Yeah, I mean, look. So just again back to the cinematography point, like this guy, I don't know, because he hasn't just worked with Robert Eggers. He worked with M. Night Shyamalan. He did the Knock at the Cabin, if you've seen that, with Batista.
I haven't seen that one.
That's where basically four people turn up is the premise of the movie. Four people turn up at a cabin. There's like a couple in there with a gay couple in there with a kid, and they say, "Super sorry, but we got to kill one of you." Or the end of the world is going to happen in like 3 days. And basically they take them hostage and they say, "You have to do it or it won't trigger." So we're gonna like torture you and fuck with you until one of you decides to kill the other one. And while that's happening, apocalyptic things are happening on the TV, and they're all arguing. It's like what I love about M. Night Shyamalan these days is he's just embraced what he always was, which was just a genre director. He's just gonna make stupid movies based on premises, essentially very shit versions of Twilight Zone films, unironically, which is fine. By the way, I love that.
Yeah.
I've really.
By the way, I actually enjoyed that recent film he did, that one called Trap.
Yeah,
if anyone hasn't seen it, it's quite a fun little movie. The real problem is people just have this image of who he is, and it became popular. Like I always say these two examples, like the bands Creed and Coldplay, right? You don't care what your taste in music is, they're not the worst bands of all time.
Not.
Like they're presented as though they have no redeeming. No, they just like they're just very much it's like a guilty pleasure style, but there's something to it. So I think the same with that. Well, it's the thing I like about him, Richard. He definitely is mad ambitious with what he'll do with the fucking plot.
Yeah.
So
the reason I wanted to bring that up is because I've watched that movie. It didn't leap out to me as being visually
I haven't seen anything
stunning or beautiful. Right. Yet it uses Blaschke in the cinematography.
That's because here's my sense. Yeah, here's my sense of how this works. Eggers has the ideas, and he has like the vision of the shot, and that's what Blaschke needs to like whip out all of his camera parts and figure out how to make that reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you that is the famous detail people get wrong about Citizen Kane. Orson Welles also was a theatre director once who'd never made a film. And the joke goes, he managed to get the #1 cameraman in Hollywood, said, I want to work on this film with you. And then he told Orson Welles later, the reason why I wanted to work with you is because I know you know nothing about films. So you'll never come to me and tell me like, no, we probably should do this shot this way. You'll just tell me, I want to do this shot. And then I won't tell you, if I told everyone on the set, that's actually impossible. No one's ever done a shot like that. I'll go, yeah, we can do that. And then the idea was, then the guy was just given free rein to just do like insane camera shots and dolly things and zoom outs. And the joke is Orson Welles thought you just tell the guy and he just does this. I think it's exactly what you're talking about, Monty. It's the idea of like, it's true collaboration. The other guy has his craft and he gets to just go wild with it.
And the sense that I get from Eggers and why the films are so good is that he is a true collaborator. He worked on it with his brother to write this film. Mm-hmm. And then in the next film, The Northman, he worked with an Icelandic poet and Viking experts to build out the world and to write the film. So Sean, who is a collaborator of Bjork's, I mean, we'll get into this, but the thing is like it appears that he actively seeks out people who have knowledge that's different from his own, so that he can. It basically, these people enable him to achieve his vision in a very authentic way, and he seems to like go to experts or his brother, who actually I think was the one who came up with the original idea behind this film. And he does seem like he's a very collaborative person, and that he knows what he doesn't know, and he goes out to plug those holes and flesh out that vision, is my sense from watching these movies.
Yeah, it's going to be sad when Hollywood ruins him. I'm gonna be devastated.
Stop it!
You know, I'll say it every week on this arc. But
honestly, like it would be incredibly sad to see him become some sort of egomaniac where he just takes over an entire production, because I feel like that's not him at his best.
I know what Richard means, though. Like, I'll give you an example. I think one of the great, we've referenced it on past episodes, so you bring up the example. If you would have asked me after the first 3 or 4 films of Darren Aronofsky, I'd tell you, mate, this is going to be another Cuba. Like, holy shit, this guy's. It's gone off the boil last 10 years or so, though, hasn't he? You know, something happened to him. He just got into that Hollywood world, and then it warped who he is. Yeah, I know what Richard means. There's very few people who survive.
Yeah,
that.
it's
especially actually because it's even worse. Here's the ultimate curse, Monty. Here's where he could have gotten away with it if he'd have been more in the Cronenberg world. If I make weird films that are critically acclaimed, what's fucked him is that Nosferatu made all that money, mate. That's the siren call where they get you to do all the big films, and eventually you're doing a fucking Flash film or something like. That's the day I don't want to wake up and say Robert Eggers Flash sequels.
I know. Exactly. No, but this is the thing. Like, you know what will happen. It's going to be something like that. Robert Eggers has said a bunch of times, you know, he only wants to make period movies. Doesn't want to make anything.
Which, by the way, is music to my ears. Keep telling me, King. Go off, King.
The problem.
I want to believe it so badly.
The problem he's got is he's now just had a critical and commercial hit in the form of Nosferatu, and a big studio, a fucking Disney or whatever it might be, they're gonna say to him, "Look, we respect your vision." I mean, bro, Sam Raimi is. I mean, he's not in the same kind of artistic thing as Eggers, but I do love him. He's one of my favorite directors, just for the
Sure,
Evil Dead
yeah.
movies, if nothing else. But you know, they've got Sam Raimi doing fucking Doctor Strange, for fuck's sake. You know, it's like
James Cameron.
Well, they lured him with Spider-Man, and then he broke.
Yeah, the thing is, these people were real artists and real directors, but yeah, once they go down that path, it is some Faustian bargain. You never seem to come back.
And I don't know what it's going to be, but I'll say this just to kind of bring us back, so we can start on the downslope of summarizing the movie and finishing the episode. I will say this: he'll never make a movie like The Lighthouse ever again. I genuinely believe. But when we fast forward 30, 40 years, we're looking at the career of Robert Eggers. This will stand out as his strangest movie, his most profound movie. I think this will be one that will get it's already a critically acclaimed movie, but I think this will get yet another reappraisal about its brilliance decades from now. I think this is one of these movies that's going to stand the test of time in a way that maybe some of his other movies don't. And it's going to be sad. It is going, like I say, it is going to be sad because I don't want to say he's peaked, but I have a very strong suspicion. It's a long way down. It's a long way down, and I've just seen it too many times with great directors. They all float down here. You know what I mean? They all float down here. So yeah, I guess we can start kind of wrapping it up. Let's talk about the ending. Does the ending nourish your soul? Were you satisfied by the end of the film?
So, I think the ending, there are a lot of Greek mythological parallels in this film, and that's the other little tidbits that are thrown in there. There's the Proteus appearance of Thomas Wake, where he looks like the Greek god Proteus with the crown and the tentacles, and Proteus also is famously a shapeshifter in Greek mythology who the thing about Proteus is that he is a prophet, but you have to catch him and he changes into a bunch of different animals or water or different forms, which is where the word protean in the English language comes from, which means changeable, right? And so in order to hear his prophecies, you have to capture him, which is very difficult. And so with the way that he is cursing people in this film and the way that he is kind of a prophet of the other Thomas's doom is very interesting, especially when he appears in that form. There's also other Greek mythological references. Clearly Prometheus.
The obvious one's Prometheus.
Yeah, Prometheus at the end when the gulls are eating his guts. That's directly referenced.
By the way, also a purgatorial kind of idea, Monty, playing into that thing.
Where the idea is Prometheus steals fire and gives it to humanity, which could be also like the apple, the fruit, the apple of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil could be a metaphor for human consciousness. So Prometheus stealing the fire from the gods. In this case, he steals the fire from the lighthouse, and he, in this metaphorical way, he gains the knowledge of his own darkness, right? His own psychological problems, and that everything that we've been seeing him devolve into in this movie is revealed to him, and that's when he is given this torture. And the idea is that the torture is cyclical, that he's chained to the rock, the bird comes, eats his liver every day, flies away, and then it regrows, and that's Zeus's punishment to him forever until the end. Well, he does get sprung loose eventually, but anyway. And like the question then becomes: is
it Heracles that breaks him free?
I believe so. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think that was wasn't that like a byproduct of one of his labors? I can't fucking remember. Whatever. I might be thinking of like
it was not one of his labors.
It wasn't one of his labors, but I think it was like a side quest.
It says it was. Yes, that's who free.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Yeah.
We're killing it with the myths, boys. We're killing it with the myths.
And so, like, the question, too, is because he is having a Prometheus-like fate, and that is a cycle, the question is whether the entire movie is a cycle where one Thomas is, like, going into the other, and it's just this whole thing is just a repetitive process that is constantly taking place on this island. And then the third, I think, mythological reference is just kind of a funny one, where it's when he is first on the island and he brings the entire jug of oil up to the top of the lighthouse. Then he has to bring it all the way back down,
That's
which
some
is
Sisyphus type shit, isn't it?
It's very funny because he's like hauling this like 80-gallon drum up this spiral staircase,
which is a good comedy scene too. The idea at the end, like, get that back downstairs.
And Wake's like, why don't you just use like the small can? Get it back down.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's very Sisyphean moment. So you have that. So there are a bunch of Greek mythological references within this as well that are interesting. And we know, obviously, Eggers is super interested in various world mythologies. That comes up big time in the Northman as well. So, look, I think this is just a fucking great movie. I think this is my second favorite Eggers film. The issue with Eggers is I like all of his films quite a lot. So it's really just ranking them as to...
Nosferatu
they're all
is the
good.
only one. Nosferatu is the only one I actively say I bounced off.
Have you rewatched it yet, though? Are you waiting?
No,
Let's see if there's a reappraisal.
I've already watched it 4 times. And let me explain why. Because I want to like it. It should be nectar to me. Like, it's everything I want. When this was announced, Robert Eggers making Nosferatu, is this fucking real?
He's also wanted to do this for a long time.
Yeah.
He had been talking about doing this since The Witch was released, saying that he wants to remake Nosferatu. So this has been... That was his mission for many years, was to make this film. Anyway,
I just think, unfortunately for me, and it'll be something I'll bring up again in the episode, but I just think if you're a horror aficionado, you have seen that movie a million times, because it's not just Nosferatu, it's every fucking vampire movie ever. Dude goes to a village, don't go into the castle, it's and I'm almost ashamed to say, I actually kind of had to stop it. I stopped the film at the moment he gets into the carriage. Beautiful scene, by the way. Beautifully shot. Looks amazing. And I was just like, you know what? I can't actually do this yet again. Like, it just felt that it wasn't giving me anything new. And it was just leaving me with the question, why did we do this again? Because the original's pretty fucking rad. And the Werner Herzog remake, which probably... Yeah. I watched the Werner Herzog remake before I watched Eggers, so that probably fucked it up. And also, by the way, even though I think what's it called? Is it Skarsgård? No, what's his surname? The guy who plays Nosferatu, the vampire.
Bill Skarsgård. It's Alexander Skarsgård's brother.
Yeah, his brother.
The guy who is in the Northman,
and obviously son of the great Stellan Skarsgård as well. But anyway, I think he was a fantastic monster. But then again, are you going to beat Kinski? You're going to beat Klaus Kinski? He's fucking Nosferatu. And no, you can't. He's mental. He's like, he's so good in that role. So I don't know. I really bounced off Nosferatu. Also, as well, it's one of those movies that, having watched it 4 times now, I don't ever think I'll watch that one again. Whereas this, the Lighthouse, it's a cyclical, I can put this on anytime. I got the Arrow video of done this insane 4K Ultra HD, fucking is gorgeous. This print of the movie, it's got the full surround sound. I mean, we haven't even talked about how sound plays in a really intense, role. The fucking blaring,
the foghorn.
Yeah, like just
even that scene at the end where he's just screaming with all that's overpowering.
It's just an assault on the senses. You want to know a film that, like, in terms of audio, I would compare it to? Dunkirk. Dunkirk, if you watch that in IMAX...
Oh, you feel like you're on the beach.
Bro, that was killing me. Like,
I agree.
Fucking hell.
It's mad,
it was so intense just from a sound perspective, let alone with the audio syncing up with what you're seeing visually. But this tiny little square movie... It's assaulting your ears and your brain in the same way like Dunkirk did. So, I mean...
This is going to sound weird, but I found the foghorn very comforting because I used to live in a tiny fishing town. that just had a foghorn going on constantly.
I'd unironically kill myself. Like, repetitive noises break me.
No, I know what Monty means, though. In general, I do hate when there's any like weird sound of it. But like, I've, for example, lived somewhere where there was like church bells every hour, and it is weird. Eventually, you just don't really hear it in a mad way.
I remember
I liked it
when we did ESL Cologne. I was in a hotel one year right next to the cathedral, and I remember Sam he could hear me through. He was in the room next to us, and I was like screaming at the top of my voice. I was hungover. I just wanted to get some sleep, and it was like, it's not just every hour you get the bells, the chimes. It's every 15 fucking minutes. You're getting reminded that the bells are there. And I was like, I was screaming at the top of my voice. This is a sick joke. Is it like it broke me? It broke me. So
that was you in the Lighthouse.
No, also, it's an ESL event as well, so you're already in fucking purgatory.
Yeah. By the way, that's something we can even go. I work at events if they're longer than 3 days. It's like being in purgatory. Like 1 to 2 days.
How long have you been in this run?
And then also,
and there's even that vibe when the newbie comes to the event. They're sort of like, "Oh, what's going on, guys? Like, I'm really enthused." You're like,
you'll type a match report, dog, and you'll keep typing them till I tell you.
And the newbie doesn't want to drink at first too because they're trying to be professional, and then they're just literally 2 bottles of vodka in, vomiting on the floor by the end.
And they don't understand, like this film, the alcohol becomes the medicine that allows you to continue on the journey. You know, that's actually part of the charm.
But anyway, I recommend to everyone, get the Arrow. It's fantastic. Get the Arrow Ultra HD Blu-ray. It's got some really good extras in there. A Robert Eggers commentary, which is fucking gold. To just listen.
Well, why don't you share some of your favorite bits with us then?
I mean,
and interesting nuggets.
So one of the things that I love as you're going through the commentary is he references all of the paintings that he used. Used as reference points, and he says, it's this artist, and I got the idea from this. It's like he is so forthcoming about his inspirations and where he took stuff from. That's always fascinating to me, but also just in terms of like him appraising the performances as they're happening on the screen. Like he like you can tell he loved the work that the actors did. So that's like really nice to hear. Like when just the glowing praise for Willem Dafoe, and obviously one of the other good things about Robert Eggers, to your point about him being collaborative, he works with the same actors. If you give me a good performance, like you are coming back, like you will. He also
was an actor, and he's been trained as an actor, and apparently he feels like he knows how to get good performances out of actors and speak their language. He says that's one of his strengths.
The joke is, to take Duncan's line, Anya Taylor-Joy asked if she could be the mermaid.
Oh, all right.
and he said, "You don't want to be this type of mermaid." so that's how much like the actors like working with him as well. He just.
Also, the joke is, she would have been the first mermaid with really wide eyes. Straight fire joke there. Not bad.
Not bad. So anyway, I think if you get a chance to watch this movie on a big screen with surround sound, or just
by the way, same for all the Eggers films. I'm with you though. He's one of those directors that's made me love having my home cinema set up where I project onto a massive wall. Like it's the shit being able to get the full experience with no person ever pulling a cell phone out or talking. It's actually heaven.
I know. Unfortunately.
Sadly, now I'll never go to the cinema again. Exactly.
Cinemas are dead now.
Now I'm ruined. I'm actually ruined. I've become Howard Hughes with film, basically.
Absolutely.
I'm in Korea, and I go to the movies at like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. So I don't know what you guys are talking about, because the 3 other people in the theater with me in Korea, they're very respectful.
I mean, but put it this way, that's fine. Unfortunately, me and Duncan are like going to a fucking Odeon in Middlesbrough. I've told this story before, I remember when I went to see the fucking last of the prequels, and, when Vader does the no, and a guy at the back of the fucking cinema just said in this like unbelievable like fucking Middlesbrough accent, he just went "fuck off" at the top of his voice.
By the way, it's the greatest ever retort to George Lucas's legacy of any way. I wish he was at the. I wish he was
He'd
at
had
the
enough.
screening,
Like it just broke him. So you do miss those like hilarious little moments. Also, by the way, sometimes it's not so good. I went to see The Exorcist when it got re-released. It was banned, right? banned for years in the UK. They re-released The Exorcist. They got a cinematic run. They did the same thing for Clockwork Orange and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? It was like, what a time to be alive, like to go and see these classics. I went to The Exorcist. Bro, when she says your mother sucks cocks in hell, there's the theatre that everyone was creased.
Oh,
Laughter,
I hate
laughter.
that. I hate when they laugh at a part that's not supposed
And
to be funny.
it
That
just
kills me.
took me out, dude. Everyone
yeah,
was
of
like
course.
crying with laughter. I'm like, it's disturbing.
Yeah, that's supposed to be one of the hardest fucking hitting lines of the
I know.
movie.
This is disturbing, guys. Why is everybody laughing?
fuck, that's
I knew after that I was out on
Right.
the cinema experience. Like I was like, yeah, this sucks. Other people ruin things, dude. Just get your friends round, get it on the big screen at home, invest in a big fucking flat screen. Get a subwoofer, get a good
Well, the quality of life upgrade is crazy.
change your life.
It's way better than just having a bigger
If you
TV,
love films,
yes.
it changes your life. It's a simple.
Well,
as that.
also, and now's never been a better time to do it, because even 20 years ago, when you had to have one of those, to have a big TV, it was a big CRT, and it cost like
course.
thousands and thousands of
Remember
dollars.
carrying one of
You
them
get-
back and forth from university in like the fucking early noughties, like where it was a two-man job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it's cheap, but like OLED TVs are not as expensive as those old CRTs used to be.
I would genuinely just recommend just get a projector. If you've got a
Sure,
wall,
yeah.
just get a projector. You can have it any size you want at that point in time.
Yep.
And the quality is perfect. It's like unbelievable how, like you say, if you scale it up, you can get it. Like, spoiler, you will be getting the 4K version, of course.
I mean, me, like, I'm like Willem Dafoe when he goes up to the Lighthouse. When I put a movie on in the glory, I'm just basking in the light. Like, it's just so good. It's just such a great way to experience it. And
great.
and as I said, I fucking adore this movie. I really cannot sing its praises enough. I know when we get to the comments, people are going to be like, I didn't get it, or
of course, yeah.
are they gay or something? It's just going to be a nightmare. It's just going to be a nightmare.
And the
to
answer
read.
is, of course, aren't we all gay when left alone long enough?
Listen,
With Willem
yeah,
Dafoe.
I was going to say,
With Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, that's that
Willem
part.
Dafoe had me at dog. So
In many ways, Monty, he's sort of like a gay vampire, just turning people. I say a D.
yeah,
you know, of course.
exactly.
Yeah.
But for the genuine cinephiles among our audience, which I'm sure are a lot of you, so I'm sure.
He said cinephile. He said cinephile.
Right. I know there will be people that will love this movie as much as I did. I just think I agree with Duncan in the sense it is an acquired taste. It's a mystery without an answer. It's a horror movie where the horror is never present. It's just implied. It's a movie about it's a movie about loneliness and isolation, yet it is riotously funny to the point Robert Pattinson has said in interviews, I thought I made a comedy. He literally said that.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, right. I thought I was making a comedy.
If you didn't have, if you were just acting it and you couldn't see through the lens and you couldn't hear the sound effects and the music and everything like that, it is just funny.
I mean, and I would, I'm one day I am going to go to where they shot this. You can go and visit the Lighthouse. I feel that strongly about like this movie. I'll refer back to the pandemic stuff. This movie tapped into something that was happening to all of us. It is so profound in what it's doing and what it's saying, and how if you went through, because in the UK we did lockdowns. I went from lockdowns in the US to coming back to the UK straight into more lockdowns. I had to fucking sign up to an app before they would even let me in as a passport holder, saying you mustn't leave your home. We will check on you in 14 days. And by the way, if they came to your home and you weren't there, you could be facing up to 10 years in prison. That was the most extreme. You would never get that, but that was it literally explicitly written down as a potential punishment if you evaded curfew. And also remember, because I'd just gone cross-continent, I had nothing in the house, and there I was, a grown man in an empty house sleeping on a fucking airbed. And then you watch The Lighthouse. So maybe the movie just hit me different because of where I was in my life. Films do that sometimes, but I think if you had similar experiences during the pandemic and you watched this movie, you would be convinced this was a movie written explicitly about the pandemic. It isn't. It was written and made before that even happened. Robert Eggers is a fucking magician. It's just that simple.
On this film, I would say is one thing to pick up on something you were saying there, one of the interesting things it does capture that does actually remind me now of when everyone was doing the lockdowns, is that dual feeling that you get where you are simultaneously isolated and it's the lack of actual people that's killing you, but also you're trapped with only a specific small amount of people, and you get the classic familiarity breeds concept. This film's all about that, because one of the things about human nature that reveals is when you think it's for a limited amount of time. I'll give an example. It doesn't have to be the pandemic. What if you go and visit like a spouse's relatives or something for the first time and stay at their house? That when you're only going to be there for a week or two, again, you tell yourself, look, it's only going to be a week or two. Play it cool. You're not really yourself. You're sort of you're restrained in a special way because you want to make it work. You don't want it to be weird. You want things. Well, here's the thing. The moment you know you can't leave, like in this film, fuck it, bombs away. At that point, you know what? Everything fucking sucks. You suck, you piece of shit. Fuck you. Of course you do. You almost have to do the pendulum has to swing the other way. So it simultaneously captures how you're isolated, but also, can I get the fuck away from this guy? Like, that, in some ways, it's like you're trapped in a cell with him. There's that.
And also, he's your boss.
Yeah, that's a good one, too.
And he's writing mean things about you in his diary.
Yeah.
Assistant slept late. Work below standard. Attitude hostile. Assistant missing. Given to habitual self-abuse.
This even reminds me of the classic trope of the difference between the boss that you get along with at work and then you go for that drink with them and it gets fucking awkward, doesn't it? Because now it's like, how much do I become the mate here? Isn't it weird that we're drinking and things are getting a bit looser? Like, there's always that weird dynamic going on. Also, to me, I agree with the other themes you brought up. Like, first of all, like I said, this would just be a really great Twilight Zone episode, not just because it's black and white. Like, I agree with you, the occurrence at Owl Creek's the obvious one. If this was made by a hack, I can tell you right now, the end of the film would go like this. It would fade to black, you would hear the foghorn, and he would wake up on the boat at the beginning again, arriving. That is exactly how a hack would have done this film. And because every Hollywood guy would go, genius, isn't it? Genius. But actually, that's what I actually also like about Eggers. Bro, he's not a try-hard in the negative sense. He's in the good sense that you're saying, Monty. Like, he'll go and research some, like, nerdy shit, or even better, get that guy and just go, you tell me what you'd do with this. Actually, I'm not even going to be the pure author here. What would you do with that aspect of the story? How would you integrate it? But then he's nerdy about the right things, but he's also completely willing, and I think this is mega brave, to allow the film to be disliked, by the way. He's not going to tell you all the answers and spell it out or even give you, like, satisfying beats always. He's just going to put it out there and just go like art. Like, hey, what did you do with it? Because one thing I do think about this film, that's why I said that thing where, for me, I can just tell, just something intuitively I sensed, that this is the guy where he gets the inspiration from another piece of art in another medium, and then he sort of goes like, that's given me like an idea or like a scene in a movie I'd want to make, and then he does it. Because I'll give you an example, which is, if you watch his films, to me, the substance itself is often not overtly put on the screen or spoken out loud or explicated. You can just sense it. Like, you can always sense he's tapping into mythological things, which do have, like, a richer tradition and all the different, like, psychological aspects. Like, I'll give you the example. One of the reasons why I'm not that big a fan of that Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is because basically it's the ultimate Tarantino film. You have to know all the scenes he's replicating on screen to know, like, oh, that's why that's clever. If you don't know, if you would just watch it as a straight film, you'd just sort of be like, what was this really about? You know, like I didn't really get into it or whatever. You have to be him, Tarantino, and know why he's referencing that thing very overtly in some cases. I also do think as well, the horror aspect. It's funny that everyone throws Lovecraftian around as one of the worst, like, appellations. This is one of the most Lovecraftian films ever. Like, I actually think one of the reasons why I like the ones where, I forget even the Stuart, whatever his name is, the guy who did all the Reanimator stuff. The reason why I like his is he just does the traditional mode of it. It's very schlocky, you know. But too many people, that's why Lovecraft hasn't translated. Too many people really do read it and go, this is great stuff. Let me just throw all that overtly on camera and say, that's not even you're missing kind of the point of Lovecraft there. It's supposed to be like this. You're supposed to almost feel the ripples on the pond of the monster, but never see the stone going into the pond. You can just sense it's there. In fact, I'll tell you right now, the reason why I always thought Lovecraft was genius in horror in that sense, and this film nails it, is any actual answer would actually deflate the film. It could never be good enough for whatever you've built up into your mind as to what Willem Dafoe's getting out of being up there, or why the mermaids. If they really, at the end, there was some story of like, they really are mermaids, or, you know, he's getting some occult power, that wouldn't actually be that good. The second you got the answer, it would be like sand between your fingers and it would just disappear.
It's even more ambiguous than that. Like, is the tentacle, you know, is the goo tentacle slime, or is it cum? You know what I mean?
Sure.
What is the goo?
You can do that, mate. You can listen. We all approach it, you know, in the way we want to.
Another Lovecraftian thing I thought they did nail, obviously with like the Terror Innsmouth, and so he did do stuff about like seaside towns and stuff. Another thing they nail in this film, and I'm really glad they did it this way. This is another thing, by the way, Robert Eggers is very good at. He never ever makes it so that anything occult is like, that's just like a person doing something. He makes it like it's the alien, it's the other. Like when you meet the mermaid, it's not really supposed to look like some straight fire Hollywood. Oh, look, you can see her tits. It's supposed to be so weird and ultra. Like, what is this, and why am I like strangely attracted but also repelled, and in a way, and there is the fish element of it. Like, what the fuck is this? But at the same time, the siren call. He's nailing that in this
also
film.
the desperation, because he gets, you know, it's the jerking it to the scrimshaw, and then Robert Pattinson's just slamming that fish pussy, man, just explicitly slamming it.
That was even a thing, by the way, because actually I told you, when I saw his films, it wasn't until after The Northman that I started to recognise him as like a name person. I didn't even know he'd made these three distinct films. I just saw them all separately. They all had their own little hype. Like The Witch I just saw because people were like, it's a really unique horror film. It's like cool setting and stuff. Then The Lighthouse was like, oh, it's like psychological. And then The Northman was just like, oh, if you remember at the time, actually, it was that whole weird thing of people trying to be like, it's like toxic masculinity or whatever the fuck. So I was watching these films and not even knowing there was a connecting factor. But that is one thing I think he actually nails as well. Is like anytime he has to do something strange like that, he definitely puts that out there in a way that I think is like very authentic. And I love that. I really connect with that stuff. I think he kills it.
Yeah, definitely.
And actually, that's even where also, like, put it this way, when I first saw this film, like I told you, the first half, I thought it is going to be some sort of mystery. Like, I thought it's going to be something like, it is actually, Monty, that like the Willem Dafoe character is like, you know, interacting with some like nymph or something, or some fucking god of the sea, and he's gone mad, but in like, you know, in an occult power sense of he's accrued all this thing. That's why you can't ever come up there, and only he's allowed there. He's the high priest of all that shit. But they play with that imagery and that themes. But I agree with you. If in many ways what makes it work is the real pieces of art it's connecting to and the mythic themes, those are left best when you just sort of like loosely connect to them. And then if someone knows that already, it's like the Hemingway iceberg thing. Then that power is then unleashed within you. If you actually try to make it like, now here's what was happening, kid, that I think it would kill the whole movie.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what I mean. It's like the movie couldn't function if it was purely literal in the same way that like The Witch operates. You know, the Witch is a very simple story told well. This is anything but.
I mean, even that scene you've referenced, the one where he's getting buried with the, you could have just got up. Like, if you try to do it, like, that's a plot hole. Like, no, it isn't. Like, if you're making that mythic, then that's fucking sick. That is some, like, you know, killing of the king or your father, or, you know, destroying a part of yourself that you don't want to acknowledge. Like, that works if you're just enjoying it as, like, artistic imagery. This is a very artistic film, actually.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, you know, goes without saying, didn't really do all that well.
That's not as much of a
commercially.
Because this is the sort of film, Richard, where like Mark Commode goes, you must see it, but then the guy who he's saying that to was a fan of Transformers too, and then they go, what the fuck is it? Yeah, you know, like, you got to know your audience.
Black and white square movie.
Exactly. It's actually why, in some ways, even though he's only done the 4, so we could only do the 4, this was
with
the one.
Twilight Vampire.
If there'd have been 6 Robert Egger films, we still would have picked this one because it's the one you probably haven't seen and probably wouldn't see and probably wouldn't get recommended to you. So I also think it's the one that's going to make you watch, whether you enjoy it or not.
Well, the thing is too is that that if you didn't like this one, you probably also didn't like Lost Highway, or these other films
true.
that are somewhat. This is more linear than some of the later Lynch films, but it still has non-linear aspects to it and can certainly be interpreted non-linearly, even if it is following the story on a very literal level. But if you guys didn't like this, none of the other films are like this one, is what I will say. Like, Witch was very straightforward. Northman's very straightforward.
I might just go a little bit hard in the
Nosferatu's
paint here and say, if you can't fuck with Robert Eggers, like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, if you can't find one of these 4 films,
get
you
out
really,
of our
really
show.
Like.
Never come back.
Like, maybe don't go that far because we need the clicks or whatever. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. It really helps with the algorithm, etc. But obviously, like, if you can't find one film you like about Robert Eggers, because they're all radically different.
They're very different.
Yeah, this is just the one where I think he was probably a little bit jaded.
By the way, that's also my other fear, Richard. My other fear is he is just the guy who dies in the small plane crash in 5 years, and then you always, what could have been? And then we'll never know if he would have become whack. The Wall Street.
No, but that's the problem. It's like if Kurt Cobain hadn't shot himself, he's doing a halftime Super Bowl show around about now. You know what I mean? It's like it's just one of that. I mean, Bill Hicks would have been in a sitcom. Like all your heroes are gonna fall, bro. Like you just have to kind of accept that. So it's almost better. Like this sounds awful. It's almost better if they go before. You just gotta get as much out of them as you can, and then it's like, oh wow, tragic death, nightmare. They were the best.
And that's why at the end of this arc, we're going to crowdfund a hit on Robert Eggers just to seal him in genius and greatness before he does the Flash sequel that I referenced
We
earlier.
want to make it clear
And we'll give him a
that.
funeral like a pharaoh, so he can we'll bury his cameras with him, so he can continue to make films in the afterlife.
And we
He's
also going to
entombed
kill
with
that
Willem.
cinematographer. He has to be entombed with him.
And
like
Willem
his
Dafoe.
court,
And Willem Dafoe must also be entombed in character from this movie. So look, anyway, final thought, because we got a couple episodes to do today. I just fucking love this movie, dude. I just love this movie. This movie, it restored my faith in cinema in a way that, like, in 2019, 2020, I think there was a real kind of despondency. You've just been hit with fucking non-stop, like, superhero slop. There was like writers' strikes. The pandemic was. Cinemas were shutting down. It just felt over. It felt so over for film, And then it was like you just had these little shining stars in the darkness. This was one of them. Tarantino that we already talked about, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. These are the movies that make you realize no matter how bleak it gets, no matter how much mediocre slop is churned out by the studio machine, there'll always be an A24. There will always be an auteur out there making movie just for the fucking love of the art. And this is what this is. It's not just a love letter to film. It is a love letter to art broadly as a concept. It incorporates so many different elements, and it just stands as a wonderful, unique movie that I know when I'm an old man, older than I am now. I'll be coming back to this 20 years from now. God willing. 30 years from now. This is a movie, I'll recommend to anyone. It is just fantastic. One of my all-time favorites.
Great film. All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you next time for The Northman.